Welcome to our discussion of Pesach for Dummies. We all need a little tutoring when it comes to the complicated holiday of Pesach. Let's talk about some holiday bloopers, things that people aren't always aware of or aren't always made certain about. So firstly, in order to get ready for Pesach, the night before the Seder is very key. The rabbis ordained that that night before the Seder is the night of B'dikat Chametz, the searching for chametz. You take a candle, if you prefer, a flashlight. You go around in different parts of the house. Maybe one member of the house puts out 10 pieces of bread in different places, and then the other member of the house has to find those pieces. But it's not just the game of hide and seek, but also to look in the different drawers, under the different pieces of furniture, to see if there is any lurking chametz. Maybe you want to put a granola bar or something in your pocket. Maybe there's some food lurking in a cabinet somewhere where you didn't think about it. So that's part of the preparation to feel cleansed for Pesach, is to search for chametz before Pesach. Then there's the eve of Passover. The eve of Passover, Erev Pesach, is unlike any other eve of a holiday, in that the eve of Pesach is a holiday, but it's only a half-day holiday. Most holidays in Jewish law begin either sunrise. Mostly they begin at sundown. But Erev Pesach, the laws kick in at noon. But before clocks were invented, it was hard to figure out noon, so we stopped eating chametz about 2 hours before noon this year in Memphis, 1032. Then we stopped possessing chametz by 1145. Each year it differs. You have to look on the local Jewish calendar for exact times. And then you can try to burn those 10 pieces before 1147, before the time you can't possess chametz. You try to burn that chametz, like a little fire in maybe a metal can outside, and be careful. And you can then declare that all your chametz is annulled. Whatever you have, whatever you possess, whether you know about it, you don't know about it, you just annul the whole thing. You can also go to your local rabbi, such as me, and you can appoint me as a messenger to sell your chametz. If you have any chametz in your house, you have leavened bread, you have cookies, you have crackers, you have cereal. So if you can get rid of it, that's great. If not, you appoint the rabbi to sell all your chametz, all your leavened products, to a Gentile on your behalf for the entire 8-day period. Then you want to get yourself a good Haggadah for the Seder. Once you have a good Haggadah, that'll guide you through. I don't need to explain most of the things. It's written in any Haggadah, even the Maxwell House, the simple Haggadah, tell you this is where we break the matzah in two. This is where we wash our hands. This is what you do in general. But a couple of pointers that aren't always so obvious. Number one, you can read the Haggadah in English. There's nothing wrong with it. If you don't read Hebrew, read it in English. It's always good to buff up on your Hebrew, try to be a Hebrew speaker, but if you can't, read it in English, by all means. Now, some people can't bear the length of the Haggadah. We make kiddush, we have a little piece of vegetable, usually the celery. Some people use parsley. Some families have a custom from Eastern Europe, having potatoes. But other than that, it's quite a while to read the entire Haggadah. If you can, you really should read the whole Haggadah. That's the tradition, that's the minhag, that's the custom. And part of it is embedded in Jewish law. But if your family just won't bear it, if you're a beginner or if you're in a family where they just won't tolerate so much reading, so then try to make sure you read Avadim Hayinu, that we were slaves in Egypt and God took us out with great miracles. If you can, read the part about how that our ancestor Terach and even Abraham, before he found God, used to worship idols, and now God has brought us closer to His worship. That's also an important section. And then there's a section that says, Rabbi Gamliel says that you have to explain these three things. If not, you don't get the mitzvah. You have to explain why the Pesach, why there used to be a Paschal lamb represented by the shank bone, why do we eat matzah, and why do we eat maror. Those are important things. And then in order to have 4 cups, you have to say the benching afterwards. You have the grace after meals, and you hold the cup during that time. You have to say the Hallel, the Psalms of praise before the meal and after the meal. Otherwise, what's the point of the 4th cup if there's no Hallel? The songs at the end are very nice. Who knows one, who knows two. But if family can't handle that much liturgy, you don't have to say those last songs. The Seder clearly comes to an end after the fourth cup, and the rest is all very nice if you can. Then there's the etiquette of dealing with the cup, a beautiful Kiddush cup here. Some say glass is good because you can see the color of the wine. Most people use silver. It's very good for the Seder. You try to have a cup that's a decent size. You can't use a little tiny shot glass. It's supposed to be at least about 3 ounces or a little bit more. And you try to drink more than half of that measure. So if it's, you should have a few gulps. You shouldn't just sip the 4 cups. It's a mitzvah to drink 4 cups. You want to be strict, you can drink the whole cup. Now, some people have trouble with alcohol or don't like it, or it's hard on their stomach. So in that case, you can have grape juice, no problem. If you prefer, you could dilute the wine, you can even up to 5 measures of water and 1 measure of wine, or you can have grape juice, and then you can drink the whole thing without a problem. We do try to hold the cup, to actually lift it up over the table and actually hold the cup during the various blessings, during the Kiddush, during the other 3 times that we make a blessing over it. Or there's one section where the Haggadah says, cover the matzahs, and say, V'hi sha'amda. You talk about how God has stood us through all the trials and tribulations throughout the ages. So that's in terms of the cup. Also, remember to fill the cup. Many people just fill the cup halfway. You want your cup to overflow. You want your cup to really be full. Then the Seder plate seems overwhelming to some people, so let's just go over it. You want to have a shank bone now. Don't obsess over the shank bone. It doesn't have to be the shank. If you just have a chicken wing or a bone from I don't know, a lamb, anything, that's fine. And then on the other side you have a roasted egg. So complicated, just roast an egg, put it there. The Seder plate's a little off base. Usually the maror, the chrein, the horseradish, put that over here. If you can't get the horseradish, all right. So then you use romaine lettuce that you can pretty much get everywhere. Try to wash it, make sure there are no bugs. And that you put over, over here, and then the charoset, the mixture, just apples, nuts, and wine, grape juice, and you grind it together with some cinnamon. That's it. It's not so complicated. I have a whole video about charoset, charoset, about this ground mixture which we eat with the maror, with the bitter herb, and there is a Sephardic way of doing it too, where you grind raisins, dates, and cinnamon with a little vinegar, and you then fry it up, and it's also very, very delicious. And some karpas, whatever vegetable you're going to use, usually celery, but some people use parsley, and as I said, some use a potato. So that's it. Why do you have the roasted items? To remember that there used to be a Paschal lamb. There really should be a Paschal lamb. We don't have a temple anymore. And there used to be other holiday sacrifice we would eat as well at the beginning of the meal to sort of fill ourselves up. And then they would eat this at the afikomen at the end. They would eat the Paschal lamb. So we allude to that by having that at the Seder plate. You also want to have the 3 matzahs as well, which we will demonstrate as follows. Okay, there's one point in the Seder, those various pieces of the Seder known as Kadesh, Urchatz, making the Kiddush, washing, Yachatz. Then we break the matzah. So you put 3 matzahs on a plate. If you don't have a special Seder plate, that's okay. You can just use a regular plate. You can put the 3 matzahs on a regular plate. Of course, hopefully it should be kosher for Passover. And then take the middle matzah of the 3 and you break it in half. Now don't break it evenly, break it unevenly. So you'll have 2 uneven pieces. Now this particular matzah I'm using prior to Passover is actually egg matzah, and that's not good for Passover. But usually you want to use shmura matzah. Shmura matzah is matzah that's been guarded from the very time it was reaped from the ground so that no water came in contact with it. It's a little bit expensive. Try to get it. I'm sure you can get it online. I'm sure you can get it if you live in a large Jewish community, get it in a local supermarket or local kosher store or Passover store. It's called shmura matzah. S-H-U-M-U-R-A. Shmura matzah. And this matzah is usually round. However, there is also machine shmur matzah, and that would be acceptable according to many rabbis as well. So you break the matzah into two. The smaller piece you leave in between the larger pieces, like this. And the larger piece, take it and you wrap it up in any kind of cloth, or if you have a special matzah bag, and you put it away. You can have the children hide it, you can hide it, and then let the children find it, and you put that away till later. Now you have these three pieces of matzah. At some point in the Seder, it says that we should cover the matzahs. We should cover it with a cloth or whatever you have, a special matzah cover. And then at other points, it says you should reveal the matzah. When you reveal the matzah, you should particularly be able to see the middle matzah, the broken matzah. Because the broken matzah tells the story of poverty and affliction. After all, poor people can't afford a full piece of matzah. They just can afford a broken piece of matzah. So we use the broken to tell the story. We say, this is the matzah which we eat. This is the bread of affliction. This matzah, why do we eat it? Because the ancestors didn't have enough time for their bread to rise, and therefore they were not able to prepare in advance because they were rushing out of Egypt. So we point to it as we say these various things. So the Haggadah, the Magid section, should be said over these things. Sometimes the Haggadah will say to cover everything because we want to confuse the children and make them ask, or because we're lifting the cup and it's not right to expose the bread when we have the wine, because we're going to make a blessing on the wine rather than the bread. We do this every Shabbos as we cover the bread. So that's a little bit about breaking the matzah. Now, when you make the blessing over the matzah, so you say hamotzi, you want to make hamotzi on 2.5 pieces. 2, because you want to have 2 like any holiday, Shabbos, Yontif, to remember the double portion of man that fell on the eve of Shabbos or the holiday. In this case, you want to have 2.5 pieces because you want to have 2 breads for being Yontif and also this year's Shabbos at the first Seder. And also you want to have a broken piece to remember the bread of affliction, the bread of poverty. So you say, then you drop the bottom matzah and you say, and then you want to give everyone a piece from the, again, try to eat at least a third of a large matzah, and then a piece of the broken matzah, and then if this adds up to 1/3 of a hand matzah, or about a half of a machine matzah, then you give it to the person and they could eat it like that. Then we turn to the korech, the matzah sandwich. So you take from the bottom matzah, the one that remains whole at the bottom, and you take a piece of that, and you get about 1/3 of a matzah, and then stick a very large leaf of romaine inside, or if you have some of the chrein, some of the horseradish, you could mix that in as well. And then you eat the 2 together in the sandwich. It's a little messy, but that's okay. You can eat it over the plate, and it's very crunchy, and you just follow the directions in the Haggadah. Later on, after the meal is over, right before the grace after meals, the benching, the Birkat Hamazon, then you take that that other hidden piece that you had, and you give everyone a piece of that to eat for the afikomen, for the last piece of matzah. And again, they should have the equivalent of 1/3 of the hand matzah for that, or about a half a machine shmur matzah. Now, if you can't get to shmur matzah, plain matzah would work, but it's preferable, say the rabbis, for it to be guarded from an earlier period, completely guarded throughout the harvest process. Better to get the shmur matzah. If you can't, regular kosher for Passover matzah would suffice for your Seder. One of the challenges of the Seder, as we mentioned, is the length of the reading section. One way to deal with that, and see people who are not so excited about sitting for the entire Seder, is to make people feel comfortable to eat those vegetables. Many people are very strict, just have a small amount of karpas, small amount of celery, and that's appropriate. But there is another opinion, another possibility, especially according to Maimonides, the Rama, you can eat more. So that would be okay if you want to just tell people, oh sure, here's some parsley and some celery and maybe a little bit of potato. And if you wanted to throw in other vegetables, that would be permissible. And then they can continue to munch on that until they get to the matzah. That would be fine. And that way people could feel more comfortable. Also, if they want to have water during that time, coffee to keep people awake, these drinks could be served at that time. You don't want to eat anything serious other than vegetables, but at least that could tide people over. Just a suggestion especially for those who find the Seder cumbersome, or for little kids. The washing also, we have a video about how to wash our hands, but just very briefly, you pour the water twice on one hand, and then twice on the other hand. That's how we wash our hands. Also, people are not always aware of the amounts. We mentioned the amount of wine to drink, and then there's an amount of matzah to have. Just having a bite of matzah may not be considered eating matzah. To eat is to eat at least an olive's worth. They say about a third of those hand round matzahs, about a third of that would be how much you should have each time it's called for to eat matzah. The bracha of matzah, and then later on for the sandwich, and then later on for the afikomen, for the final piece of matzah at the end of the meal. For each one, you should have each person should have about a third of a matzah. Now, if you only have one set of 3 matzahs at the head of the table, not every person can eat a third of a matzah from that matzah. So you can have additional matzah on the table. There's one official Seder plate matzah, and that you break the middle one, as we explained. But also, you can have a plate that has various matzahs on it, and you could supplement so that every person could eat a third of a matzah for the beginning, for the mitzvah, a third of the matzah for that sandwich, where you have the romaine lettuce with the matzah, and then a third of a matzah also, the afikomen, for the part that's hidden away and put aside, which you eat at the end of the meal before the grace after meals. So these are some of the things that will make your Seder more kosher, more according to customs of Israel, the laws of Israel. And why is that so important? Well, that's what the sons ask at the Seder. What is this all about? And part of it is about getting it right, about doing it according to the traditions of Israel. Also, part of Jewish life is also we got out of slavery, but now we're servants of God. And you say, well, what do you mean? I'm a free man. I live in America. It's all about freedom. Well, there's this concept called of human bondage. We're not so free. We're bound by the strictures of God, morality. To understand that there are things that we do them this way. There's a Seder, there's an order, there's a way that we do things. It's part of showing our submission to God, but it's not just about some ritual object. It's a symbolic of how we guide our lives in general toward the ethical principles and the religious principles of the Torah. When there is this Seder, when there is order, that's the real freedom. Some have pointed out that very often after slaves are free, they just go wild. There's no order at all. And here the idea is, even in our freedom, we find the most freedom in orderliness. Freedom in the ability to continue to know what is the path of life. Children who have no order, they're confused. The Seder is symbolic of Jewish life, which is ritualized, which has customs, which has laws, which has details. And it's by following these customs we feel a part of the world Jewish community, of the timeless, eternal Jewish community, past, present, and future. And it's through this that we bring order to our lives, and through that order, we find freedom as well. I want to wish everyone happy, healthy, and a kosher Pesach. I hope that you've enjoyed this video. Well, welcome to see our other videos about the Parsha and the various holidays. Thanks to Jason Lefkowitz, our producer. Thank you.